Hello, and welcome to Dental Practice Risk Management through Regulatory Compliance. This is Part 8, Texas State Board of Dental Examiners Rule 108.3 and Rule 108.11, Display of Registration and Consumer Information. My name is Boyd Shepard. I am a clinical associate professor in the Department of General Practice and Dental Public Health at the UT Health University of Texas Health Science Center in Houston, School of Dentistry. Please know that I receive no financial benefits that would create a conflict of interest or restrict my independent judgment with regard to the content of this presentation. At any time while viewing the video streaming course, you can take a break by simply pausing your computer. At the completion of this section, you will be asked to take a short exam in order to complete the requirements for streaming video courses. At the time, you will receive instructions regarding taking the exam. Dental Practice Risk Management through Regulatory Compliance. Part 8. Texas State Board of Dental Examiners Rule 108.3, Display of Registration, and Texas State Board of Dental Examiners Rule 108.11, Consumer Information. Overview. This online course is designed for dental practitioners to gain a greater understanding of the Texas Dental Practice Act and the rules and regulations of the Texas State Board of Dental Examiners, specifically Texas State Board of Dental Examiner Rules 108.3 and 108.11, Display of Registration and Consumer Information, respectively, so that they may implement the appropriate changes in systems in their day-to-day practice that ensures regulatory compliance with these rules and laws. Through understanding and implementation, the participant will also be managing the risks inherent in modern dental practice. Course objectives. Upon completion of this course, the participant will review, understand, and be able to apply the relevant provisions of the Texas Dental Practice Act and the Texas State Board of Dental Examiner rules and regulations. To be able to apply Texas State Board of Dental Examiner rules 108.3 and 108.11, display of registration and consumer information, respectively, the focus of this presentation. The participant will value ethical and legal approaches to clinical dentistry in their own practice. And the participant will review and implement the risk management procedures and protocols that will prevent patient complaints to the Texas State Board of Dental Examiners. Okay, let's get started. Dental Practice Risk Management through Regulatory Compliance Part 8, Texas State Board of Dental Examiner Rule 108.3, Display of Registration, and Texas State Board of Dental Examiner Rule 108.11, Consumer Information. Before we get started looking at these rules, it is important for the participant to understand and appreciate that the Texas State Board of Dental Examiners performs three primary functions. Number 1, licensing of dentists and dental hygienists. Number 2, the annual registration of all dentists, hygienists, and labs. And finally, number 3, enforcement of Texas laws regulating the practice of dentistry. Also, it is important for the participant to know exactly where in the world does one find the rules. The rules being the Dental Practice Act, as well as the rules and regulations of the Texas State Board of Dental Examiners. You can find the laws that regulate your license as a licensed dentist or hygienist in or at the website for the Texas State Board of Dental Examiners. It is easy to find this website by merely typing in Texas Dental Board or Texas Board Dental into your favorite search engine of your web browser, in this example, Google. It will bring you the first link for the website for the State Board of Dental Examiners. On the top menu bar at this website, you will see a link, Laws and Rules, that takes you directly to the laws and rules that regulate your license. Here, you'll find the Dental Practice Act, the Texas Administrative Code, which contains the State Board of Dental Examiner rules. Also, on the State Board website, you can find board policy statements. The best example being the State Board of Dental Examiners policy statement with respect to the use of Botox in dentistry in Texas. The State Board has put together an excellent array of frequently asked questions with their responses, as well as providing a page that gives the dental practitioner forms that assist or are part of their compliance with the State Board rules or Dental Practice Act. As part of risk management for your office, it is good for every licensed dentist and hygienist in the state of Texas to understand and to frequently navigate the State Board website, because there will be information there that is updated, changed, as well as valuable information that assists you in your day-to-day practice, not the least of which is the Dental Practice Act and the rules. However, please be aware. There are new rules and laws that are always being proposed as well as implemented without notice to you. That is why, again, I emphasize it is good risk management in your day-to-day practice to check the State Board of Dental Examiners website often. Bookmark it as a favorite in your web browser. Know how to get there quickly should any issues arise. You can follow changes in the law by subscribing to the State Board of Dental Examiners newsletter, as well as using other resources, the best of which I have found is the TDA newsletter. On the State Board website, you can follow proposed new rules by going to the current issues link on the State Board website, and you'll see a drop-down menu which will have a direct link to recent rule proposals. There may be one, there may be none, or there may be several. I have visited the website and looked at recent rule proposals. At times there can be a healthy handful of new rules being proposed by the State Board of Dental Examiners. This is the location on their website where you would follow that information. It is important to follow this information if for no other reason than not only do you stay in touch with and on top of these rule proposals, but the rule proposals will also give you the opportunity to participate in the process that allows you to offer comments on rule proposals that will be weighed in the board's consideration of whether or not to implement those rules. Complete instructions are given on how to do that at this link and location on the State Board website for all rule proposals. Also on the menu bar for recent rule adoptions, you would look under the Law and Rules link on the top menu bar. This is where you will find rules that have already gone through the legislative process of being proposed, notice to the public, comments submitted, board consideration, and final board vote for the implementation and adoption of board rules. You can follow those rule changes at this location on the board website. Again, type in Texas Dental Board in your favorite search engine of your web browser. To get to the rules that we'll be studying today, we'll look at the Law and Rules link on the top menu bar, and we'll click Texas State Board of Dental Examiner Rules, which will take us to the page that has the State Board rules and regulations. There are actually two links on this page. The top link is the link that allows you to navigate these rules in HTML web format, much easier to navigate here. The second link down below allows you to see the law as it is written in black and white PDF format. You can navigate it, but it's much easier to read and navigate in the top version. I recommend that you do go ahead and click the bottom version. If for no other reason, you can download the PDF to your computer where you will have it all the time, whether you can gain access to the internet or not. Once you click the top link on the previous web page for the State Board rules and regulations in HTML format, you'll be taken to this page, which gives you a menu or a table of contents for the chapters available in the State Board rules under the Texas Administrative Code. Today we will be specifically in Chapter 108, Professional Conduct. Please take a moment to notice all of the different chapter titles, the titles broadly describing what is contained in each of those chapters. Again, for risk management purposes, it is very, very prudent for dental practitioners in the state of Texas to know the law that regulates their license. Here you'll find the chapters dealing with all aspects of dental practice relative to State Board regulation, including Chapter 101, the requirements for dental licensure, Chapter 102, the fees that support that licensure, Chapter 103, the details for dental hygiene licensure, Chapter 104, the details for continuing education requirements. Chapter 107 is particularly important to know and understand the dental board procedures. These are the procedures that are described for conducting investigations on patient complaints against practitioners. And if you ever find yourself the subject or a respondent in a dental complaint investigation by the State Board of Dental Examiners, you will immediately want to go to this Chapter 107 to follow and track the procedures of how that case and investigation will be handled. Also notice Chapter 110, the details with respect to regulating sedation and anesthesia in dentistry, and so on. Particular note for good compliance and risk management, please take note of Chapter 114, extension of duties for auxiliary personnel dental assistants, and likewise Chapter 115 with respect to dental hygienists. Once you click the previous link for Professional Conduct, Chapter 108, you'll be taken to this page, which gives you the subchapters of Chapter 108, Professional Conduct. We will be primarily in Subchapter A, Professional Responsibility. Again, I would ask you to look at the titles broadly in these subchapter table of contents. Subchapter B, specifically dealing with sanitation and infection control. This particular area of the rules is very, very important. It's an area that you're going to want to study and know and make sure you're in compliance with, and makes up the bulk of the checklist for any live inspection of a dental office by any of the dental board investigators. If a dental board investigator comes to your office, particularly unannounced, in their investigation of a state board complaint, their checklist contains many, many items for their inspection of your office with respect to sanitation and infection control. To check your compliance and to evaluate whether or not you would pass that inspection, good risk management dictates that you would delegate this duty to one of your staff members to learn and make a list of items that are listed in this particular part of the rules and report back to the owner of the practice with respect to compliance with the sanitation and infection control requirements. Here you'll also notice in these subchapters rules with respect to mobile dental facilities, business promotion, and contractual agreements. With respect to business promotion, this will contain the rules with respect to advertising. Contractual agreements has the rules with respect to doctors who enter into agreements with non-licensed entities to set up dental practices. Again, you should take the time to read, investigate, and understand all of these sub-rules listed in Chapter 108, Professional Conduct. We will be spending our time in Subchapter A, Professional Responsibility. When you click this link, you will be taken to this list or table of contents of rules. And today we'll be focusing on Rule 108.13, Consumer Information, and Rule 108.11, Display of Registration. Please note again all of the other rules listed in Subchapter A, Professional Responsibility. This is not only the table of contents of this subchapter, but it is also the table of contents for this risk management video series. There is a video that is dedicated to at least one, and in some cases like this video, two of these rules listed in Subchapter A. And the reason for this risk management video series is because this area of the law that regulates your license, this Subchapter A, Professional Responsibility, it contains not only the rules that make up where your practice lives and practices on a day-to-day basis, but also these are the most commonly violated rules. If there is ever a complaint and an investigation, most violations arise out of some breach of these rules. As you might imagine, particularly 108.7, standard of care, and Rule 108.8, records of the dentist. There can also be violations of 108.11, display of registration, as well as 108.13, practice of dentistry on certain children. As you might imagine, Rule 108.7, standard of care, and Rule 108.8, records of the dentist, contains the most violated rules and sub-rules, and there can be violations of 108.11, display of registration, as well as 108.3, consumer information. We'll be discussing how these rules can be violated as we proceed through this video. This is how the rule appears online on the State Board of Dental Examiners website. We will review the rule in detail on the following slides, but the purpose of this slide is to show you the HTML format and the way that the rule appears once you start navigating it on your own web browser. Please note the source note at the bottom of the rule. Source note: the portions of this 108.3 adopted to be effective February 20th, 2001, and then it gives you the citation in the Texas Register. It is important to understand with respect to source notes that this is the information that tells you how long a particular rule has been effective. Obviously, this Rule 108.3 was adopted and made effective in 2001. Some rules are so recent that this will give you an indication of whether or not a rule was effective during a particular period of time during which a complaint arises. In other words, a patient may complain that, or the state board may find or allege that you did not comply with the provisions of Rule 108.3 during a particular period of time. And if that period of time predates the date of adoption, in this case 2001, which would be unlikely in 2018, but there are other rules that become so recently adopted that any complaint that arises from conduct prior to the adoption date would be a defense or an excuse against not being in compliance with that rule. So, looking at Rule 108.3, consumer information in detail, Rule 108.3, Part A. A Texas dentist practicing dentistry in Texas shall notify dental patients that complaints concerning dental services can be directed to the board by providing the name, mailing address, and telephone numbers of the board. Such notification must be accomplished by one or more of the following three methods. It is important to note that this is a mandatory rule. When the rule or any law states that the licensee shall do something, then it is considered mandatory. In this instance, a Texas dentist practicing dentistry in Texas shall notify dental patients that complaints concerning dental services can be directed to the board is a requirement. It's mandatory. Every licensed dentist in Texas must provide this information. Such notification must be accomplished by one or more of the following three methods. Number one, on a sign prominently displayed in the place of business of an individual or entity regulated under the Dental Practice Act. Or, number two, on each registration form, application, brochure, or written contract for services of an individual or entity regulated under the Texas Dental Practice Act. Or, number three, in a bill of service provided by an individual or entity regulated under the Dental Practice Act. The vast majority of dental practitioners and offices provide this information on a sign prominently displayed in their place of business. It is rare to see the use of the additional two methods that are allowed by this rule. When you consider it, the third option of posting this notification somewhere on the bill of service might make a lot of sense as an alternative to prominently displaying a sign in the place of business. Two things about the sign and being prominently displayed. Prominently displayed means and is interpreted as in a location where patients will see it, will notice it, will be able to find and utilize and read that information. Secondly, I mentioned before that if an investigator comes to your office based on a complaint, part of their checklist will not only be the sanitation and infection control, but their checklist of items to inspect with respect to compliance will include whether or not you have this information either prominently displayed as stated in option number one, or if the information is being published utilizing the other two methods. You will have to demonstrate that to the investigator as part of their compliance checklist. Rule 108.3, Consumer Information continues. Signs, if utilized for such notification, may be obtained from the board office at cost. Signs shall be exhibited in the dental office in plain view of patients. So this second sentence of this subpart B goes to the heart of the prominently displayed component of subpart A. It must be considered and exhibited in plain view of the patients. It also states here in this subpart B that you may obtain this sign from the board office at cost. The board office sells a version of this sign that is in compliance right out of their office. However, this board rule tells you exactly what is required, and there's nothing that dictates or mandates or obligates you to buy this sign from the board office. You can draft and produce this sign on your own computer and printer. The rule then tells you exactly the requirements if you're going to produce your own sign. What must be included in the sign? Subpart C. Unless the sign provided by the board is utilized, the following requirements shall be met in order to comply with this rule. You must use lettering that shall be a minimum of 10-point font. Lettering shall or must be in black or blue-black ink. All lettering shall be legible. And signs not obtained from the board shall be a minimum of 5 by 7 in size. To the right on your screen is an example of the information that must be contained on these signs and in a format that complies with the board rule. The seal of the State Board of Dental Examiners is not required to be on the signage for compliance with this rule. It is merely there for illustration purposes, but it is not required. Notice that the sign gives you the language that was in Subpart A, that complaints about dentists, dental hygienists, and dental assistants may be sent to with respect to notice concerning complaints, and then it gives the State Board of Dental Examiners address in Austin or via the State Board of Dental Examiners email address specifically for complaints. It also states that for more information and a complaint form, the patient can visit the State Board website as well as the option to call the toll-free number. This information, the way it's displayed here, would be in compliance with this Rule 108.3. And again, there's the option, if you remember the previous part of the rule, that you can either display this prominently as a sign where patients will be able to notice it in clear view, or you could put it on the bill of service. And it doesn't say in the rule whether or not it needs to be printed on the first page, the second page, the front of a page, or the back of a page. Arguably, you could print this in 10-point font on the back of a bill and it would comply with the rule. Again, the vast majority, if not 99.9% of dentists in Texas post the sign in their reception area. You can also go to the State Board of Dental Examiners website, where they do have this form available via a link that allows you to merely click the link and it gives you the sign that you can print off from the State Board website at no cost. Moving on, Rule 108.11, display of registration. Again, this is how the rule appears online on the State Board of Dental Examiners website. We will be reviewing the rule in detail on the following slides. Again, please make note of the source note. The provisions of this Rule 108.11 adopted to be effective February 20th, 2001, and you see a difference in this particular rule that it was amended thereafter to be effective November 27, 2005. So, with respect to this particular rule, it was passed or adopted the same year as the previous rule, but this particular rule, Rule 108.11, has the legislative history of being amended. Either something was added or some wording was changed 4 years later in 2005. This is a good example of why you would want to know this information. Rule 108.11, display of registration. A dentist or dental hygienist shall display a current registration certificate in each office where the dentist or dental hygienist provides dental services. B. No dentist or dental hygienist shall provide treatment for a patient without placing the current registration certificate on exhibit. C. When a dentist or dental hygienist provides dental services at more than one location, a duplicate registration certificate may be displayed. The duplicate may be obtained from the State Board of Dental Examiners for a fee set by the board. D. A dentist or dental hygienist may practice without displaying the person's current registration certificate as required by this section for not more than 30 days after the person receives written confirmation from the board that the person's original license was issued. Let's look at the subparts of this Rule 108.11 in detail. Subpart A. A dentist or dental hygienist shall display a current registration certificate in each office where the dentist or dental hygienist provides dental services. Again, you see the word shall, which is a clear indication that this is mandatory. If you're licensed by the State Board of Dental Examiners, then this rule is part of the regulation of your license. And the word shall tells you that this part of the rule and the subpart of this particular rule is mandatory. You must, you shall, you are obligated legally to absolutely display a current registration certificate in each office where you provide dental services. If you practice in more than one office, you have to display a current registration in each of the offices where you practice. Subpart B. No dentist or dental hygienist shall provide treatment for a patient without placing the current registration certificate on exhibit. Obviously, the Subpart B emphasizes the mandatory aspect of this rule by redundantly restating exactly what it says in Subpart A by use of the word shall. It is mandatory, and if you don't display the certificate, then you cannot provide treatment at that location. Subpart C. When a dentist or dental hygienist provides dental services at more than one location, a duplicate registration certificate may be displayed. And thankfully, the State Board of Dental Examiners will gladly provide you with a duplicate for a fee set by the board. My advice would be that you would write the board and send them a letter requesting the duplicate. This information is most likely available on their website. Finally, Subpart D, a dentist or dental hygienist may practice without displaying the person's current registration certificate as required by this section for not more than 30 days after the person receives confirmation from the board that the person's original license was issued. So, there's a 30-day window that you can practice without displaying the registration, 30 days measured from the day that you receive written confirmation from the board that the license was issued. Any questions for the State Board of Dental Examiners with respect to Rule 108.3 Consumer Information and Rule 108.11 Display of Registration can be directed in writing to the Texas State Board of Dental Examiners at the following address. Again, I want to emphasize with respect to these two rules, Rule 108.3, Consumer Information, and Rule 108.11, display of registration, that it is imperative for the practitioner and the participant of this video to understand that even though a patient complaint or a complaint that arises against a practitioner will most likely have to do with the standard of care with respect to treatment or record keeping violations or both, it will not be something that necessarily a patient will complain about in a complaint to the board. The board will not receive a patient complaint that specifically complains about not displaying consumer information or not displaying their registration. However, these two items are part of the checklist for dental board investigators. If a dental board investigator comes to your office conducting an investigation based on a complaint, these are items that will be part and at the very front of their checklist of items with respect to compliance. These are rules that are very, very easy to comply with. I have seen over the years where dentists have been caught and have been in violation of these rules. And they are such technical violations and yet so easy to be in compliance with that it's important to understand exactly what the board requires with respect to each, with respect to consumer information as well as display of registration, both of them being mandatory. Again, you can direct your questions to the State Board of Dental Examiners as well as your requests for the forms or a duplicate registration by sending mail to the State Board of Dental Examiners at this address. If you have any questions, if you need clarification, please send an email to this email address, utsdcontinuinged@uth.tmc.edu. This has been Dental Practice Risk Management through Regulatory Compliance, Part 8, State Board of Dental Examiners Rule 108.3, Display of Registration, and State Board of Dental Examiners Rule 108.11, Consumer Information. The course references that we have utilized are the State Board of Dental Examiners rules found at the State Board of Dental Examiners website. This completes Dental Practice Risk Management through Regulatory Compliance, Part 8. State Board of Dental Examiner Rule 108.3, Display of Registration, and State Board of Dental Examiner Rule 108.11, Consumer Information. It is now time for you to take a short exam in order to complete the requirements for streaming video courses. Due to the nature of our subject content, a passing score of 90% is necessary in order for you to pass the course. Upon successful completion of this exam, you will be visually informed that you have met the requirements to proceed. If you fail to answer enough questions correctly, you will be instructed to take the exam and a new set of questions will be provided. You will have 3 chances to fulfill the requirements. If you are not successful, you will be instructed to review this section again. Good luck on the exam. If you are ready to take Dental Practice Risk Management through Regulatory Compliance Part 9, State Board of Dental Examiners Rules 108.4, names of dentists, and 108.10, notification of change of information, then upon the completion of this exam, you will be provided a link to continue. If you wish to proceed at a later date, you will need to log in, and no further payment is necessary since this is a continuum.